Kia ora, hello. Welcome back to the series by Popular Urbanum, Medieval Sewing Made Easy. This is episode 5, Sewing a Medieval Buttonhole. This series is intended as a basic guide for beginner hand sewers who want to learn how to sew authentic buttonholes on their own medieval clothes. Along with the other videos in this series, it should help you learn more about the construction of historical garments so that you can identify and realize the most authentic product. In this video, I'll be demonstrating the method used to make the buttonholes found on garments from late 14th century London. I'll be using my old favourite, Textiles and Clothing 1150 to 1450, as a reference. Previously, we stitched an eyelet onto this piece of woolen cloth with an applied facing, and you can refer to our video part 4, How to Sew an Eyelet, for details on that. Now you can see here I have a pewter medieval reproduction button, and I'm using it to estimate the size and location of my finished buttonhole. Medieval buttonholes were positioned far closer to the finished edge than our most modern buttonholes. They were just a few millimeters away from the edge, whereas modern shirts will usually have at least 10 millimeters or so between the buttonhole and the edge. Once I've established the size and position of the buttonhole, I get ready to cut it. This too is different to the modern method, which is usually to sew the buttonhole first with a machine and then clip it open. Medieval buttonholes sit perpendicular to the edge. I fold the fabric accordingly and take a little snip through both layers with some nice sharp scissors. You need to be confident with this cut. If you get it wrong, or if you hack away at it, it will quickly look very messy. That being said, you can make small corrections to the ends of the cut to make the cut the right length to accommodate the button. You want it to be in the Goldilocks zone, just long enough. I must apologise for being out of frame during this part of the video. I'm just lengthening the cut a little with the scissors and testing that the head of the button fits through without placing too much strain on the fabric. I then thread up my needle with some 2-ply silk sewing thread that has a knot tied in the end of it. With the face or right side of the work towards me, meaning the outside of the garment, I pass the needle into the hole and between the outer fabric and the lining, knotting off. I pass the thread through the work a few times to secure it, as I've done in previous videos, then make sure I have the needle passing from front to back through the work at a distance of approximately 1.5 to 2 millimeters from the cut. I'm now ready to begin stitching the buttonhole. There you have it. Holding the tail of the thread in my left hand to keep it on the left hand side, I pass the needle through the work, going through both the outer and lining fabrics. I then bring the tip of the needle back up through the cut, in between the cut edge that I'm working and the tail of the thread that I've been holding, as shown. This makes a little loop on top of the stitch that holds it in position. For those of you who have done a blanket stitch before, that is essentially what you're doing here, except on a very small scale. Once this first stitch has been made, ensure that it is laying nice and flat, perpendicular to the cut, and has a good amount of tension on it. Think Goldilocks again. Then it's time to repeat the whole thing just a short distance away. I like to work in the clockwise direction around the cut because I'm a right-handed sewer. Loop the thread over the tip of the needle as you stitch if you have to with your free hand. Your first few stitches will probably look a little bit crooked, but they tend to straighten out as you move along the buttonhole. So you can see me just making my first few stitches here. I'm going a little bit slowly and carefully because I'm just getting used to making the stitches on this particular piece of fabric. Just getting the hang of it. Always checking that I'm going through both layers of fabric and that the distance from the cut with each stitch is about the same, and also checking that the distance from the previous stitch is the same. Some historical sewers like to make a row of very small running stitches around the buttonhole before stitching it. There's nothing wrong with doing that if it makes you happy. I've seen research that says that this was a technique in later historical costuming. However, I have not seen any evidence to support the use of this technique in the Middle Ages. By all means, do it if it makes you happy, if it makes it easier for you, whatever works for you. But yeah, it's, as far as I know, not a medieval technique. So I'm just going to let the video run, and so you can observe just continuing with those stitches to the end of the cut. When you get to the opposite end of the cut, just flip the whole piece of work around and continue straight down the other side. Don't go around the corner, so to speak. These medieval buttonholes did not have a curved end, such as where the stitches are arranged like spokes on a wheel. All the stitches were aligned in the same direction, parallel, as shown in the diagram. Just moving along there with a few stitches, pretty much the same as the first side of the cut. I find that the work is a lot easier. The stitches are also a lot straighter. Now I'm almost finished the buttonhole, and you can see that the stitches are lined up pretty well, particularly towards the end. There we go. I test the size of the finished buttonhole for fit by passing its intended button through it. That fits quite well. I'm fairly happy with that. So on this occasion, I'm going to find a place to knot off my thread. Now, normally I would not endorse the use of an excessively long tail of sewing thread. That's just a bad habit of mine. In this instance, however, there is a medieval technique of sewing buttonholes where the thread is not cut in between buttonholes. So there is a reason today to have a long tail of sewing thread on your needle. I'm going to demonstrate this technique now. I find the position of the next buttonhole and, as before, I make the cut for it using a sharp scissor. Medieval buttonholes were often quite close together, often so close together that the buttons themselves would touch. We're not doing that today. Now you get to observe me actually cutting the buttonhole in frame. Now once cutting the buttonhole is completed, I'm ready to again pick up my needle at the previous buttonhole, push it into the work between the outer and facing fabrics, and taking it through to emerge out of the second buttonhole, as shown. I'm taking care not to catch the fabric as I pass the needle along the channel. I'm then ready to begin my second buttonhole just as before, beginning with a few securing stitches. Oh, don't forget to check the size of the cut. Okay, and just showing you a few stitches to start you off on your second buttonhole. You should be good to take it from there now, right? There you have it, a quick tutorial on how to sew a medieval buttonhole. Let's compare mine to the extant example. Not too bad, perhaps the stitching could be finer, but I'm calling this a reasonable facsimile of a medieval buttonhole, suitable for high quality reenactment clothing. You will notice how close together the buttons on the original are placed. This seems to have been typical for 14th century garments, as I was mentioning before, and particularly for fitted sleeves. Thanks for watching, and please feel free to comment in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from any historical costumers or other interested people. Oh, hello. I didn't see you there. I guess that means you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and remember to like, comment and subscribe. And also stay safe, have fun and keep reenacting. Je vivrai liément, tout secret créature, se vous saviez vraiment que